We're live. All right. Today we have Nikki. You are a mother of 3 daughters, animal-based, which I love, entrepreneur and wellness practitioner living in the jungle of Costa Rica, biohacking your way through life to live and offer the most wild, nourishing, and culturally diverse experience for your kiddos. So welcome. It is an honor to be able to make this work. And it's so funny how I found you, the little backstory. So Paul Saladino, the carnivore MD guy, I follow him, of course, read his books, all those kinds of things. And he made a post, and one of my friends sent me the post, and it was like the sunscreen or whatever. And I was like, I need to see if this person will come on the podcast, and I'm like, because I just kind of don't care. Like, I'll reach out to anybody, and it's like, it always just kind of seems to work out. Like, the most interesting people are like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, yeah, let's definitely do it. So let's kind of jump into all these. There's so many things I want to talk about, and I wrote in a list of them. But first, let's talk about how you got to Costa Rica, because I think we need to give the backstory, since we do have unlimited time in this world and we can continually do as many of these as we want. So let's kind of start at your beginning story on what made you decide to be like, yep, it's time to go to Costa Rica and raise children.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Kind of a long story. I'm originally from Philadelphia. My
Pittsburgh.
Ex-husband. Oh, amazing. I'm from Philly. Yeah. I grew up in North Jersey, but was in Philly for 12 years before coming to Costa Rica. So I kind of consider myself a Philadelphian.
Yeah.
I owned a restaurant there with my ex-husband for many years. It still exists, and did lots of real estate and stuff there. So Philly is so my home in so many ways. But my ex-husband and I had been coming to to Costa Rica from Philly, hosting a music festival on the western coast of Costa Rica for a decade before deciding to actually land here full time.
Wow.
So we would spend anywhere from 2 weeks to maybe like a month or so every year for 10 years. And each time that we would come, I would kind of envision my life here, and was just sort of like already dreaming and kind of pulling it in of wanting to be here one day. I had kids during that whole time and sort of just kept multiplying. And then one day, one of the houses that we would stay in, the caretaker of that house was like, this house is for sale. Why don't you guys consider this, considering that you come every year for, an extended period of time? So we started dreaming it up. And ironically, when we decided to pull the trigger and say, okay, fine, we're going to move to Costa Rica, we streamlined our businesses that we had in Philly. We ended up not actually purchasing that property, but it was sort of the hook that got us down here all the time. So
it's interesting because my daughter's in a Waldorf school, and lately we never thought we'd homeschool or unschool kind of. And the last week, a big dive into unschooling and homeschooling has been emerging in our, there's always that hook that gets you like to where you're supposed to be. And so, I love that. So,
exactly.
All right, so now in Costa Rica and divorced, have an amazing co-parenting relationship from what I hear. I would love to talk more about that, because the way you talk about your co-parenting relationship is exactly how I talk about mine. Basically hit the co-parenting jackpot. Like, we see eye to eye on everything. We back each other on everything. There's not like, if I'm like, hey, I think we need to start homeschooling Sloan, she's like, yeah, I think we need to start homeschooling Sloan. Like, we're so in sync with a lot of that stuff. And I feel sorry for some people that don't have that and they get caught up in the fighting. So I would love to hear whatever you're comfortable with sharing on how you got to the point where the co-parent, because I think there's a lot of people that listen and are like, well, how'd you get there? My answer was I did a lot of work on myself, and so I would love to hear your perspective of how you guys got to the point where you can have this amazing co-parenting relationship.
Yeah, our story is pretty interesting. I never thought that I would get divorced, never thought that I was going to become a co-parent.
Same.
So we landed in, exactly. I don't think anybody really plans for that, right?
Go. Sure. Go into it and you're like, I think.
Land here in Costa Rica, pre-COVID, COVID ends up happening, the world starts falling apart. And unfortunately, my relationship was one of the relationships that did not survive. And the interesting thing about it was that I feel like it just shook so many people, and your really deep core values, became very apparent and more non-negotiable.
Yep.
And ours were just so different.
Wow.
That we had this wow, how have we been in this dynamic for a decade? And these things we are not actually seeing eye to eye on. So, that was tough and very surprising. But at the end of the day, we were kind of look, we both want to be happy. I want you to be happy. I would hope you want me to be happy. And if that means that we have to do that with somebody else, then we were both kind of okay, I think we can try to make this dynamic work in whatever way. We had no idea what it was going to look like. And that's what we chose to do. And it wasn't easy. Right? I don't think anybody could say, oh, yeah, it was just smooth right from the jump.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy. It was brutal for a while there on my end, too. But you get there.
Yeah, exactly. You got to just keep trying and keep staying open. And like you said, it's personal work. We do our own personal work on what's triggering us. And then I feel like we can be more compassionate to whomever else it is, whether it's our ex-partner, our children, a random stranger, right? We just have a bigger capacity to understand what's going on and communicate more clearly and effectively. So obviously when you're sometimes in a relationship dynamic, when you're triggered, you just go to each other and it can be explosive or reactionary, and that's what you're kind of dealing with. But when you're in a co-parenting dynamic, I feel like what I've learned is that it serves so much to get really clear on what I need and what I want and what is ultimately best for the kids, not even for me. And then just be able to say that specifically, hey, this is what I see going on. I think this is what we should do about it. How do you feel? And it's usually cool, let's do that,
I think that has been the biggest way to find common ground for us too. And we've moved past and through a lot of things, but I think that was no matter what was going on, no matter how angry I was or how upset she was or whatever it was okay. Every day we still have to get up. We still have to be parents to Sloan, and we need to do it in the most profound way that we possibly can, given our situation. We both come from divorced homes that maybe weren't the best situations growing up. And so I think when we went through ours, we just knew that wasn't the way. We didn't know how or what way it was to go. We just had a very clear example of how not to fucking do it. And we're just
exactly.
Let's start by not doing that and then figure it out the rest of the way we go. It's funny. My ex-wife, she talks about all the time, growing up, her brother wasn't the best behaved kid. And she was like, I kind of was able to get away with more because I just realized the threshold of the dumb shit he didn't do that. And then anything I kind of did really wasn't that big of a deal. She's like, so I just kind of pivoted based off of whatever he, and I'm like, that's such a slick move. It's such a slick move. So does he live in Costa Rica now? Do you guys have 50-50 custody? How does that work for you guys?
Yeah. We do 50-50. He lives in Costa Rica. He lives about 15 minutes from me. We live right on the coast, so I'm about 5 minutes from the beach. He's right down the road. We do a week with me and a week with him. So my daughters go to the same school. They go to an alternative, holistic jungle school down here. I was actually a Waldorf homeschool mom for 6.5 years before coming here.
Okay.
So I very much will have so much to chat about. I know that whole realm so well. But they do go to a holistic school now that I really love. It's just very, how do I describe it? I don't know. It's just very jungly.
I kind of love it. I feel.
Yeah, it's indoor, outdoor play. They have a farm on the property. They do permaculture design and, work with plants and things. They actually get choices. So each trimester, their school is broken up into 4 trimesters. And each trimester, they have core classes like reading, math, writing, Spanish. And then they can choose whatever electives. I think they also get 4 electives that they'll go through a 10 or an 11-week period that they get a choice of. So it's kind of cool. They can choose a different thing, 4 times a year to explore and kind of get into and see if they like it. And
I love that because it gives a huge gap of like diversity of thought too for the children. So they aren't locked into something all year long. They can change, they can move, they can go through this and that. And, it's one of the things I had to overcome with Sloan was, in American now, it's like nothing ends. Everything is a year-long fucking sport, a year-long event, a year-long whatever. And it's like, okay, I do think it's important that if you commit to a sport, you see it through the season. I do think that it is important to do these things. And so I was having an issue at one point with her in one of the things we were in, but there was no fucking end to be like, you need to see it through till this date. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do here, And so I ended up being like, look, here's the situation. There's no end date. And I explained, like, I would prefer us to finish things, but if there isn't an end date, this is what it is. These are your options. If we're not going to do this, to go into this. And I think that's really important when kids are younger too, because it's hard to keep. I go through interest with shit. Like I consumed all of, that Saladino's information for like 6 months. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to study the universe or, like in my spare time. Like there's different things we like to do too. So locking in for years because, a kid has 9 baseball leagues they get to fucking play in when they're 6. It's like, come on. So I love that school is like, look, every 10 weeks, let's turn it over. Let's explore new things. Your sister did this and you didn't. Love
it, they can just choose it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is cool because then you're like, awesome, you love it. And if they hate it, you're like, all right, you have an end date. Like you got a couple more weeks of this commitment and then you get a break from school. You get to choose a whole new plethora of things to explore. So
yeah, I love that. Okay. So then in an ever increasing world where food is becoming a huge topic, I do want to touch on this because plant-based was like the second thing you wrote, or food-based or animal-based was one of the things you wrote. And I was raised, we hunted for deer. We ate cattle that came from right down the road on the farm. Like I remember the first time I had Walmart ground meat, I called my dad and was like, what the fuck is this? Like, that is not what it tastes like in the home freezer, Yeah. So have you always, I always was that way. Have you kind of and it just gave me permission to be more of myself. So now everybody that's around me is like, great, he's never going to eat a fucking vegetable.
You'll love this. My kids so often, because we have all Paul shirts that say kill is bullshit. And they're like, we want one that say vegetables are bullshit. And I'm like, we could make a shirt that says vegetables are bullshit.
Yeah. I love it. So how did you get there? Like, or, how were you always kind of that way?
No, actually, I've gone across the whole entire spectrum when it comes to food. I had an allergic reaction to a jab that my ex-husband, that we did not see eye to eye, demanded I get.
Okay.
With my first daughter, and I went into a crazy autoimmune spiral.
Okay.
Could not figure out what was going on with me. I couldn't touch any raw food without getting really bad rashes on my hands. Had super bad inflammation. And it actually took me about 7 years until I figured it out. And in that 7 years, I went from completely raw vegan to paleo, eventually pretty much carnivore with like a little bit of fruit, which kind of led me to more of this like animal-based kind of lifestyle.
Right.
And I've been on this path for probably 4 years now of just knowing, okay, this is what I do the best with. I eventually narrowed it down that I'm allergic to grains and eggs. So
eggs,
I don't
that's so strange.
Well, the interesting thing is I found out that when they are making these adjuvants for all of these things that they're putting in our bodies, they're using egg embryos.
So that's why the peanut butter allergy is a thing, because the peanut oil is the carrier oil, and the myelin's not formed around the nerve, and then they become allergic to peanuts because of that situation. Yeah, that's where the peanut thing came from.
So it's like, it's just this weird, and I, again, would have never thought because I ate eggs growing up. I love eggs even right now. I'm like, I love eggs. Like I work out every day and I like have such a struggle getting enough protein sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm literally that mom who has a bowl of steak pretty much all the time in my car. People are like, what are you eating? I'm like, meat. Constantly consuming
Ribeye.
meat. Yeah, exactly. Like
I love it.
Always have meat around. So, but I wish I could just have an egg. Like I could have a couple hard-boiled eggs and be good.
Yeah.
And sadly for me, it just doesn't work. I do give my kids eggs. I do believe in the, nutrient density, especially if they're, I have chickens that I get eggs from my neighbor and stuff here, which is really cool. So, I think they're such a great source of so many bioavailable nutrients that we actually need. I'm just not allowed to have them myself. So
eggs. I'm glad I can still eat eggs. How do you find that the animal-based lifestyle affects the relationship kind of with your children and their relationship to food? Because that's very different than most.
It's very different. Well, and another ironic thing is my ex-husband he has an alpha-gal allergy, so he's actually allergic to red meat. So,
you guys are polar ends of the spectrum since COVID, huh?
I know. Could you imagine? So they have such different life experiences being from one household to the next. So I think it actually works well for them because they just get a blend. They're like, okay, dad does this stuff that's like pretty much illegal at mom's house. So we can indulge in all of the bullshit when I'm here and, not when I'm at mom's. And my 5-year-old daughter will actually say that. She'll say, Mom, dad feeds us bullshit all the time. I'm like, I know, it's okay though. You can have bullshit. So I think that having that very polarized experience for them is kind of just teaching them like figuring out what works for them specifically.
Yeah.
I hope, that they carry that.
Well, I think it's good too, because I'm big on like not all one way is the right way, not all one way is the wrong way. If we really peel everything back, it's simply the vibrational belief system that we hold towards whatever we deem to make manifest in our life. That's just how everything works. And so if your belief system is that meat's good, you will manifest a system that can handle it. And so one of the things that I've been really trying to, I kind of drilled into Sloane's head when she was younger that sugar was bad. And I'm like, I kind of fucked that up. And like, I'm trying to undo that now and going into like sometimes foods and all the times food, because I'm like, okay, Sloane, your body, like not telling her this, but our bodies aren't fuck ups. Put your body in the most advantageous position to thrive. Of course, we should do that on a regular basis. But if I decide to go on a sugar bender, I should have a body that is healthy, strong enough, and able to adapt to whatever situation I ask it to go through. And that's what I want her belief system to be. That if she decides to eat broccoli for 6 weeks, she's going to be fine. Body's going to break it down, do exactly what it needs to do with it. And that's so I think that it's a good, healthy balance between the two, even though she knows we eat meat with every meal.
Yeah.
It's just the standard.
It's good. I think it's good for them to not, have fear, but also it's like armed with knowledge. I always say, like, it's just like giving them, these, what I think, are the best foods for them. And then I also have them check in with their body, so Halloween just passed. We don't do Halloween in the jungle like we do in the States,
okay.
But they have been trying, a lot of expats have been trying to get together, and they pulled off this little surf town that I live near where every shop in the surf town participated. And that was like our little trick-or-treating like lane.
I love that.
And it was actually really cool this year.
Yeah.
But it was like the one cool thing that happens all year round. So of course my kids went nuts and they're like, oh my God, candy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, let's do an experiment. Like, let's see how many pieces of candy you can actually eat before you feel sick.
I love that.
I
love
and then
it.
You'll kind of know. And then I'm like, you can pick 10 pieces. And if you want to eat all 10 of them right now, like, go for it. And tell me how you feel.
Yeah. I love
that.
My
littlest one went nuts. She ate probably 6 pieces. And then she was like, Mom, my belly does not feel good. And I was like, okay, why do you think that is? And she's like, I think because I ate too much candy. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm like, I think so too. I'm like, let's get some meat in your body. Let's get some water. Like, let's keep walking on and maybe save it. I make suggestions, but so she actually has all the rest of hers just in my refrigerator. She's kind of just like, I don't know if I want to mess with this again.
Yeah. I mean, I love that because it's a teaching moment. It's giving her autonomy. It's allowing her to make all of her own decisions within reason, and it's kind of, in my mind, it's showing like, okay, 6 is too many, but 1's okay. Like, you're going to be okay, and that was like, I got, I'm really big on the Vivo barefoot or any type of barefoot shoe. Like that's, I wear them a lot. I do have my cowboy boots that I wear a lot too, but I got like the extra wide toe so that it, I can at least pretend in my mind that it's not as bad. But so my daughter, of course, wanted cowboy boots because dad has cowboy boots and she wants to be a cowgirl, And I'm like, okay. And so I really struggled a little while with that because basically since she's been born, she's barefoot or in Vivos, and I was like, okay. But again, a strong, resilient body. And like at one point where I was like, Sloan, I don't know. Because I also have a pair of flip-flops that I wear. And they aren't the Vivo ones. And she was wanting a pair of flip-flops. And this is kind of what made me change my tune about it. Because I was like, well, baby girl, they're not the best for growing feet or whatever. And she goes, well, you wear them. And if you wear them, your body's strong enough to handle them. So is mine. And I'm like, son of a bitch, she's listening to everything I said. And I'm like, okay, I think we can get cowboy boots now, and it's like, because you want to have that healthy balance. Like, I don't want her to miss out on Halloween. Like, are you kidding me? I fucking loved Halloween. Like, we used to trunk around with our big pillowcase and get a bunch of candy, and we didn't eat all of it, but we would eat it and then realize that 6 pieces was too many, but we can adapt to 3 and that's fun.
Yep.
So I love how you're doing that. I think it's awesome to give children that autonomy over it. And then they don't develop a, like, I need to have this.
Right. Well, I have 3 daughters. So the interesting thing was my youngest went crazy, did all 6 and got a stomach ache. My middle daughter did 3 and was kind of like, I'm cool. I'm going to keep going, and finished all her candy in one night. And then my oldest daughter had 1 piece. And then like 2 days later had another piece. And then, so she just really paced herself out. And I was like, okay. And of course, my middle one then is like, well, why does she get to have candy every day? And I'm like, well, that's the way she's choosing to do it. Like you guys all had the same equation and you all went about, how you wanted to work with it differently. So it's really interesting to see how their own brains work and then how they learn from each other.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see too, like with their personality types. So like it's like my buddy Len and I are very different, and he can buy like a sleeve of Oreos and have like 2 a day for like a week. And I'm like, if I'm buying a sleeve of fucking Oreos, I'm eating them all that afternoon, and then I just won't buy them again for 3 months. And it's like, so I wonder if your youngest like has kind of more of my personality, and your oldest has more of Len's, where it's like just a little bit every day. I'm like, no, fucking sprint. Full bore ahead, and deal with the consequences.
It's so interesting. It's so cool just to watch like their development and who they are and stuff. I think my littlest one, it was probably, like I said, there's not much. I mean, the jungle is great and we go to the beach every day. We have a very fun life, but it's not stimulating like it is in the States.
Sure.
We're just so immersed in nature. So when they get to do anything consumer-ish, they're like, what is this? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's kind of, it makes it magical.
Yeah, exactly. It makes it magical. It makes it very magical. And then even here, so we're going into summer right now. Our rainy season, it's still here, but it's just ending. And the summertime of Costa Rica is mid-November, December, January. So Christmas is like one of the hottest, nicest times of year. Yeah. But coming from the East Coast, my oldest is like, where the fuck is the snow? And I'm like, it's summer. What do you mean, where's the snow?
That's how I feel in South Florida. Like down here, I mean, I just went to the mall yesterday because I had to get a dress shirt or something, and I'm like, all the Christmas trees are up and all the things are up, and I'm like, oh God, I love it. But why is it so fucking hot outside? It's so interesting, the change. So how old was your oldest daughter when you moved?
When we moved, she was 5.
Does she miss it? Or was that kind of just like the age where it was like still cool to just kind of transition into this life?
I think she misses being homeschooled the most, actually. That's really? The one thing that she misses. Like when she says anything, she says, I want to go back to Philly. And I'm like, why? And she's like, because I don't want to go to school. I want you to homeschool me. And I'm like, damn, she's the only one who remembers really being homeschooled because, you know, she was old enough and we were doing all the learning. Whereas my youngest daughter was a year old when we moved here. So she has no other concept besides like being in the jungle.
Sure.
And it's really interesting because we'll go to different rivers and stuff, and there's like big boulders and you can kind of jump in the current and let it pull you down in different parts. And there's always tourists that come because obviously it's a tourist destination. And we'll be there, and my girls will be jumping off these huge boulders and getting sucked down the current, you know, and they've done this hundreds of times, but these people have a heart attack. They're like, oh my God. And I'm like, no, she lives here. Like, this is what she does. This is like her backyard. And they're like, what? You're not afraid? And I'm like, no. I'm like, this is all she knows. She's like a total girl version of Mowgli, like Jungle Kid, you know?
Yeah, I love that so much. There's
she kind of doesn't know any different, which is cool.
Yeah. Do you ever think you'll go back to the homeschooling, or you're pretty happy with the situation that you're in with the kids?
You know, I think about it all the time. I really do. I think my oldest is almost there. She's 10 and a half now. And I think that I could do it with her. It's just hard with like balancing being a single mom and doing work online and trying to kind of have my own projects going on and then having to worry about like educating.
Yeah.
This is something cool that I wanted to share when we first opened. There's this cool concept, and I wish I remembered the woman's name. I don't remember, but it's called the 5-hour school week.
Okay.
And she just breaks it down in this really cool way of making it easy for kids to learn. And that it's not supposed to be this really stressful thing, that we're not supposed to become educators and teachers and all of these things that we are just programmed by society and life to think, oh my gosh, they have to be doing X, Y, and Z by a certain time to be smart or to go places in the world or whatever. You know, I feel like everybody has their own story of what that means. And it's not true. It's just not true. Like, we can provide so much rich knowledge for children in such an easy way that, because I know that, I'm like, damn, I could be doing this. Like, I could figure out how to make this work.
Well, I think what you're talking about is exactly what I'm struggling with now. Like, it's part of what I'm trying, you know, me and my ex-wife are having conversations about this right now and what that looks like and can it be done. And I mean, there's days like just yesterday, I'm just like, you know what if I just stop sending her to fucking school and she just came with me all day? Mm-hmm. And she's at the office, and if I have to go to the cigar lounge for a meeting, she can sit out back and color, or like, I don't know, you know, like maybe it changes my day up a bit, or can it work? And I mean, I couldn't read until 11th grade, so I probably shouldn't be the one teaching her how to read, you know? And I'm like those are the things that creep in. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? Dad couldn't read until 11th grade. Now he's a doctor. So I'm kind of not a fucking idiot, you know, like maybe, you know, there's like things that we can do. And so I get that, and like, can it be managed? And so I'm going to look up this 5-hour
I have
school
two more
week.
things to say on this. I'm going to grab a book off my bookshelf.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Okay. This is amazing. This is by Ainsley Arment.
Okay.
It's called The Call of the Wild and Free, Reclaiming Wonder in Your Child's Education.
Okay.
I highly, highly, highly recommend this book.
Okay.
It's just wonderful. It blows all the beliefs of what you think you should do completely out of the water and lets you just get to a place where you can trust yourself. And the second thing I want to say is I ran an Airbnb in Philly when my children were small. And one of my guests, my oldest daughter was about 18 months old. And I was kind of a pioneer in the mom front. I didn't have a lot of friends who were having kids and stuff when I decided to have children. And the one friend that I knew was sending her daughter to daycare, and something about it felt so wrong to me. I was like, I don't want to send my kid to daycare. I know some people have to, and
Yeah.
like, that's totally fine. But that wasn't my story. And I was like, I have this opportunity to be with her, and I really want to take that. But I was feeling those pressures and hearing those stories of like, oh, she's got to go to school eventually. And this woman comes to my house, and somehow we start talking about homeschooling and just educating. And she was a woman from San Francisco, Berkeley, California, who was opening an unschooling school. She was the mother of 2 twins who were 12 years old at the time. Her son was studying at UC Berkeley with a physics professor as a 12-year-old. And I was like, how did you do that? And she's like, I didn't do that. And I was like, what? And she was like, you don't take on a role of an educator to be a homeschool parent. She said, you provide environments for learning. Your job is to put them in environments that they learn.
I fucking love
And
that.
I was like, whoa, okay, awesome. So like asking my daughter, what do you want to learn? Like, what's interesting to you right now? And then just getting someone to teach her those things, whether it's classes. And if you're actually homeschooling, like my middle daughter loves gymnastics. I wish I had a gymnastics school for her.
Yeah.
And if she loves it that much, it's like, send her every day.
Right.
Literally, let her go every single day. And that's school. That's learning. And who knows what she's going to do with it.
This is so right up my alley too, because I've always said, like, let's say she's struggling in reading. I don't know. She's not, but if she was, right? But she was thriving in gymnastics, because you just brought it up. I would double down on the gymnastics. Because like, someday you'll fucking read, because my parents did it the opposite, my parents are awesome, but they tried to get me all the help in the world it didn't fucking help, because then I didn't like it. And then it was all of these things. And so I love everything you're saying. It's just kind of reinforcing. Of course, this podcast is happening at the exact time that we're making these massive considerations of these changes in life. And again, I think I've said this so many times that children are your biggest personal development book that you will ever get. And overcoming the need to be the best or the smartest or always right or whatever these things are that we have as parents, everything you just mentioned is like, you have to put all that aside and realize that like, you don't have to know everything and you can still do this thing. Because like, in my mind, it immediately goes to, okay, I have to also now learn how to become a teacher in all of my free time.
Right.
And then that's where you get scared and you get paralyzed. Yeah. And it's like, you get scared and paralyzed, and then your child stays in the program that you don't really want them in, because you think you have to become the teacher. But then you talk to someone like you who's kind of in like, and then it's like, oh, wait a second, I can reframe this and I can change this.
Yeah. And it's so much easier than we think. It's so much easier. That was my
feel it in my core when you say that. Like, I can viscerally feel like it is easier. It's harder to get her to go do what she doesn't actually want to fucking do every day.
Right.
And I hated school, so it's hard to send somebody to something I fucking hated to go to.
And that's how I feel with my oldest daughter. When she's like, Mom, I just want you to homeschool me. And like a part of my soul gets crushed every time, because I'm like, fuck, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And I know that I could do it. I just have to rearrange things. And then, of course, there's her dad. Like, I co-parent, and we're very, polarized in that belief. Although we have such a good, functioning co-parenting dynamic, especially compared to like what I've seen. It's just those core things of like, that's why we're divorced, right?
Yeah,
because those core
course.
things we just are so polarized on. And I'm like, damn. So like, what would that look like if I'm homeschooling her and then she still has to go to school when she's with him? And
right.
There's those kinds of struggles and stuff. But what I was saying earlier was that she's at an age right now where I could say, okay, you want to homeschool? What do you want to learn this week? It's your job we can sit together right now and let's find 3 topics. I think math and obviously reading are huge. She's a big reader. My middle daughter, not so much.
Sure.
So reading wouldn't be an issue, but just like making sure that she's getting those fundamental core things, but then just asking her like, okay, cool. Like, let's research the things that you want to do, or like, what do you want to learn? What kind of environment can I put you in that's maybe not school, but that you're still learning. Oh my gosh, I apologize if you can hear my neighbors digging a pool. Do you hear like boulders?
No, I thought maybe it would be thunder, but it's totally okay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry.
Must have taken a break or something before because it just got really loud suddenly. But yeah, and then just kind of handing it over to her and seeing what she does with it. And my oldest is very type A, where she will get the things done just because she wants to perform really well. And,
Sure.
you know, I know that we can make it happen for her. And maybe we do go that route one day. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's definitely easier than we think. And I think giving them some kind of say in like, okay, well, what is it that you actually want to learn? And then seeing how they pull that into their world, you know, because as they're doing research on different places or volcanoes and then being able to take them to those places, like that's all considered learning.
Yeah.
You know,
Arguably even more valuable.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in this digital day and age. It's like if they're learning about a volcano, let's say, and they have to do all the research. And then I'm like, okay, we'll find one in the country and figure out how we get there. Like they have to use the map. You know, maybe they go then outside of the country and they research one in another part of the world in a different country. And what language do they speak? You know, maybe we would travel to that place and like go meet a local family and figure out how to communicate with them and maybe cook dinner, like have a meal, like break bread, you know, and then go see the volcano. And like all of that is such rich learning experiences that you don't get from school.
Yep.
That are still education, right? Like they're still giving so much value.
I love how raw and real you're being right now too, because it's like, fuck, you know, I could do this or I wanted to, you know, like I love, because I think sometimes people are like, they view people that they're listening to and they put them in such an authority position, like they don't fuck up or they don't make mistakes or they don't. And that's part of what I want people to understand on this pod. Like we're all still trying to figure it the fuck out. So thank you for being vulnerable with a lot of the things that you're talking about. And okay, so another thing, you mentioned it to me once, and I just want to make sure we have time to talk about it because I know you got to go in, not quite yet, but I know you're going to have to get off because it spoke to me. And so my dad I grew up on 100 acres in Western Pennsylvania and then in Pittsburgh on the weekends. And the woods are like, that's my happy place. Like, I don't ever want to come home when I go there. Like, it's like, oh my God, you know, and I see it in my daughter. We go back there. She doesn't ask to watch TV. She wants to be outside. She wants to go hiking. And then, you know, you brought up fires. She wants to make a campfire every single day. She wants to be around the campfire. And you brought up how you guys do campfires every week and the power of rituals. And I would love for you to touch on that because I've just seen the few times my daughter's been around them. Something's different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think evolutionarily, we are meant to be in nature. We're part of nature. And I feel like in America, primarily, we're so disconnected from the elements, you know, like it's raining outside. We don't go out to play. As a Waldorf homeschool mom, we went out to play.
Yeah.
Like I had all the rain gear,
Same.
all the snow gear. I didn't care if we were out for 20 minutes. I was like, we are bundling up and going outside in whatever weather it is. Like I think that connection to nature is so important for all humans, adults, children, everything, because you just learn so much. You get to listen so much differently. So yeah, fire is one of the ways that we do that here. And it's just so cool. It evolves. Every single week is different between what the fire looks like, what materials we're using to actually build the fire, who's there with us, you know, what we're bringing to it. I do these really cool releasing ceremony things where we'll have an object. It could be something from the house, like right now. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My oldest daughter, we cut her hair recently and she saved it. And just today she's like, can we throw this in the fire on Friday? And I was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
so cool. So whatever we're bringing to give to it, but we do this ritual where we will hold a stick or something and we'll all just talk about and reflect on how the week was. Did we have a good week? what were the good parts of the week? What were the more challenging parts of the week? And you can give the challenging things to the object, and then we like place them in the fire together. And it's just been such a cool concept to pass on to my kids and sort of have them look forward to. And then they share that with their friends who come, and they think it's really cool. And then at the end of it, I bring a pot and maple syrup and some chocolate, and I literally mix up some chocolate and we'll dip fruit in it that I like melt over the fire. So it becomes this very like kind of cool treat that we get to have too.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I think this is all part of where we've gotten away, at least in America, from like that family unit of just doing simple things, like just be around the fire. We don't have to do a million things. We don't have to run to this practice or that. But like, let's slow life down.
Yeah.
And I think that's what builds the bond with our children that lasts a lifetime, about slowing life down. Going on a trip to the volcano. Like it's one thing to just be like, oh, we're going on vacation this weekend and hop on a plane and go on vacation. Like that's no different. All you did was move home to the other location. You didn't slow down. You didn't have focused presence. You didn't do a lot of these things that I think are super important and valuable in today's society. And it's almost easier now to, how do I want to word this? It's almost easier now to give, it's harder now to give kids your undivided attention and connection, but I think it's easier to connect now with your kids more than ever because they're so starved for it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
So it's like, it's not that hard. I can have a tickle fight with Sloan in the morning for 5 minutes and the connection's insane because we just tickled for 5 minutes because dad's always on the go. And it's one of the things I'm working on changing and shifting and doing things with the business to make things, happen in a certain manner. But it's, little things like that. Like my parents didn't have tickle fights with me, like every day. Like there weren't things like that, so I think that now and I think parents are starting to wake up more and more. And of course I'm attracting it because it's my point of focus and that's what my brain's doing that. But I'm attracting more and more people into my sphere that are just kind of saying no to the original way that things are done. And I think these are some of the benefits of what came out of COVID.
Absolutely.
Is a lot of people just saying, I don't think this is the right way. It just doesn't feel right anymore. And trusting their gut and being like, I don't know, but I can fucking figure it out. That I do know. I don't know how, but I know that I can.
Yeah, it's just letting go of the narrative, right? It's letting go of all the things that we've been told about all the things, whether it's our diet, whether it's the way we raise our kids, what we should be doing with our lives in order to feel fulfilled. It's all of those things.
That's a big one. So let me see if we have time. All right. We got about 7 minutes. So I want to see if we can do this. That's a big one. We can go
even maybe to 10.
Okay. So feeling fulfilled with your life. Okay. As a mom, I know what I struggle with as a dad, but like as a mom and a businesswoman and wanting to be how are you navigating the fulfillment in life and not compartmentalizing it? And because you can't, this whole narrative of like, oh, you just shut it off when you walk in the door. Only lunatics can do that. Yeah, I or maybe other people can. I can't. I have a very hard time just being able to shut it off at the door. And so how are you dealing with that aspect of your identity in all of these different areas?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
The most honest answer anybody can give.
Yeah. I think if anybody told you it wasn't hard or it wasn't a struggle, is lying, or they have somebody doing all of the other primary things for them, and they have one focus and like someone else is caring for their kids full time or their household full time or their business or whatever. It's definitely much, much more compartmentalized. I think for me, I involve my kids in what I'm doing as much as possible. And I feel really lucky to be able to do that. But, I work with food and I work with clients and I serve medicine and stuff down here. And one of my clients who was just in town, he was coming to the river with me and my daughters on the week that I had her. And then on the week that I didn't have my kids, I was doing these really deep dives and stuff with him specifically. So I think that they're just very much integrated into what I'm doing in a way that we're told is not good or not okay. Or like you said earlier, just take your daughter to work day. It's like, yes, do that. Let her see what you do and let her figure out how to be helpful to you, in that way.
I love that.
Because we learn from them, right? Like ultimately, one of the things I've just most recently surrendered to was the fact that I don't know anything. I don't know at all, right? I'm growing alongside my kids as they're growing. Yeah. And I tell them that all the time. I'm like, guys, mommy is just as flawed as you feel maybe sometimes, or, like none of us are perfect. None of us have it figured out. Yes, I'm bigger than you and I've been here longer than you, but like, I'm still learning how to do hard things just like you guys are. Like, I don't know that we're actually that different.
It's a good point that you brought up there, because I frequently tell Sloan, and I didn't purposely do this. This just happened. I don't know. I've said I don't know so many times to her. And one of my friends was like, I think that might be one of those powerful things you could tell her. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then we started talking about how we viewed our fathers specifically, because they always had an answer to something, as this. And so then we've held ourselves to the standard of like, I have to know fucking everything because somehow dad knew everything. And I'm like, whoa, it's okay to say I don't know, but we can find out.
Yeah.
And then this is how we do it.
And at least for me, and I get the vibe from you too, that we're not these like authorities, right? Like I'm not like, I know everything and you must listen to me and follow all the rules. And I feel like that's that old concept of like kids are supposed to be seen and not heard. And that's why they always had an answer for everything. And, with my kids, I'm like, all right, let's do this different. Let's figure it out together.
Yeah. And it's definitely interesting because I'm always aspiring to be more of your level of the parenting. And I do sometimes find like, I want to move into that authoritative role. And when I move into the authoritative role, because my daughter is exactly like me and her willpower is unmatched, that the power struggle ensues like that. And then it's like, oh my God, okay, what have I done? And so constantly navigating that, like, how do we do this? It's definitely ushering in a new style of parenting, I think. Yeah. And
I mean, it's tough. I cry all the time. I say to my girlfriends, because I'm the same, right? I want to raise daughters who are assertive, who say no, who are going to say, actually, that's bullshit and I don't want that.
Yeah.
But in order for them to learn and feel safe on how to do that, they have to do it to me. Yeah. And I have to sort of take it in a way. And not that I'm creating disrespectful kids, because that's not, what I want at all. But I want them to be able to say no. And then I kind of have to reflect of like, okay. And curiosity, I always try to bring myself back to curiosity of like, okay, well, why? Explain to me why you don't want to do this, or explain to me what you're feeling, just so that I can be less in that authority and more kind of curious and open to what they want, because it matters, right? I have had to unlearn so many things as an adult, as I think we all have, because someone told us, you're not allowed to do that, or you're not allowed to say that, or you can't treat somebody that way. And I'm just like, damn, I don't want my girls to have to relearn how to protect themselves or to have boundaries, or,
Yeah, and it starts with us as the parents.
And it starts with us. And it's not easy. Like when my girls are like, I'm not doing that, I'm like, damn, okay, like how do I explain this in a different way where we can both have a win-win, where we can both like meet each other in this kind of compromise? And then we're modeling that for them too, but we weren't taught that. Nobody taught me how to do that. So it's like this learning experiment, and I guess we get to see when our kids get older how they actually do turn out. But in my heart, I feel like it's going to be good.
I mean, I feel the exact same way, and that everything you just said literally just happened like 2 days ago in my house. And so it's like, I resonate with it so much. And I'm like, oh my God. And you don't want to break that spirit of that, like, no, but it's that fine line between like respect and disrespect and honoring your wishes and honoring how you feel. And, you know, I was always told, like, if I didn't want to do something, like, well, why don't you want to do it? Well, because. And they'd be like, well, because isn't a reason. And I'm like, I just don't want to. Like, why do I have to? I don't want to do the thing that you're trying to make me do. Like, I don't want to go on the roller coaster. I just don't want to get on the roller coaster. You know, I know everybody else is. I don't want to. Well, you're getting on it anyways, or whatever. And I don't want her to have that. Like, I don't want to just because, like, no is a full sentence. Exactly. And if you don't want to do it, it's absolutely okay. And I kind of have started much more recently after I found that really after the situation calms down that I can get more of the explain to me why you don't want to go do that thing. Because when we're like a 9 out of 10 and I'm trying to be like, tell me why you don't want to go. Because I don't, you know, and it's like, just tell me why. You know? Like, I want to give
like
you
nothing's created in the chaos that, you know, or nothing solved in the chaos that it's created in. So I'm learning still, you know, alongside my kids that when they're all ramped up, like me trying to solve anything by matching their intensity, like doesn't get us anywhere. So sometimes I'm just like, all right, fine. Like, I just got to go chill. And I cry. Like, sometimes I'm just like, oh, what am I doing? What have I done?
Yeah.
You know, like, this is so hard.
Yeah.
But then we all sit and we talk about it. And, you know, repair, I think, is everything in all aspects of relating. And we're not perfect. So I don't think that we should try to pretend we are, because we're the parental figure sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I love it. All right, we're up against it for time.
I know.
That's okay.
This was so good. It went so fast.
I know. We'll do a part 2. I promise we'll do a part 2. It'll be awesome. I can't thank you enough for this. I know that we had our struggles getting it there, but I'm so grateful that you were able to get on here, and we'll definitely do another one. This was amazing. And if anybody wants to work with you, do you have a minute to kind of tell everybody what you do, and if they'd like to come or figure out a way to work with you? I would love to help promote that.
I'm kind of in the process of reinventing all of that right now. I've been doing a lot of in-person things here in Costa Rica. I'm currently rebuilding my whole website. So I will have retreats offerings again, probably within the next month or so.
Okay.
I have a new animal-based cookbook coming out soon. And then I teach online and kind of just do Q&As and art and just teach some of my fun recipes and stuff, mostly with moms, but I have had a couple dads and stuff there too. So it's just kind of a fun, like, little hangout to talk like this, you know, just about whatever is coming up in life and learn some new recipes or do like really cool art projects and stuff. So I will have all of that available probably within the next month or so.
Awesome. When you have it, we'll make sure to promote it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So nice to see you.
I know,
Have an amazing day.
This was so good. You too.